All right. Hello, hello.
Hi.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Looks like we got some people in the chat. This is nice. Yeah, this is a little bit different than our last one. I don't think we had anyone in our soul chat, which was which was fine, but it's always nice to have people here. Although we're used to talking amongst ourselves quite a
You know,
bit, so
yeah.
We do it all the time.
yeah, today we're coming with They Live. I think Tara, you talked about this in our last episode as well. Yesterday was actually John Carpenter's birthday, so I don't
Woohoo!
we didn't even really plan it like this, but here we are. So happy belated birthday to the legend John
John
Carpenter.
Carpenter, happy birthday. And
Da,
yeah,
da, 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 da.
when you think of, people who've left their mark on kind of Hollywood cinema and genres, John Carpenter is up there. So if you haven't seen The Thing, wow, that is terrifying
I
movie.
still
Have you
haven't
all
seen that
seen
one
it?
actually. No.
Yeah, it's all set at like a research facility in the Arctic or Antarctic, I can't remember which, and it's terrifying and wonderful, and just in the same way that this is super violent, that one's super scary.
And also the way that Halloween basically invented the slasher genre and defined horror movies for more than a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then the whole Kurt Russell part of his career with Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, Escape from LA, that whole world, Assault on Precinct 13. Yeah, just really kind of foundational classics of cinema.
Did he score like all of his movies or
Yep.
Yep.
okay. That is something that would like you don't see a whole lot of. You don't see a lot of like directed by and also like composed
And
by.
also, like, I wrote all the music as well.
Oh, Gregory is telling me that I have to watch the thing,
You
which
have to watch The Thing.
I've been
Oh,
told
hey,
before.
Greg.
Yeah, welcome, Gregory. Thank you for. I guess we can call him Greg now since there's not two of us in our on
It's
our
not
same
Craig and
screen this
Greg.
time. So you can go back to being Greg.
Yes, Craig and Greg would be hard.
Sorry, I
uh,
don't have the chat up. I was getting an echo from the Twitch stream when I had it up, so
oh yeah,
my apologies.
you can just mute. You can
You
mute
can
the.
mute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my god, someone's talking about Tyler Perry being the do it all director. Like, oh yeah,
It's true. It's
okay. I mean, he
true.
does do it
He
all,
does
but
He
do it
does do it
all.
all.
the quality,
I don't know.
not really comparable.
He was the best part of Gone Girl. He was great in that.
Oh yeah, thank you, Andre, for that nice moment of a reality check. Yeah, so talking about They Live, I guess this is just going to be the year where we like just watch every movie that's just like fuck you capitalism, like in all of its different forms,
It
like.
does seem to be a theme for us lately.
Which I mean, I feel like I feel like I've been of that mindset for a while. I feel like we're all on the same page in that sense, and it's just nice to have some movies that are like, "Hey, we can do this and have fun with it." Let's
Exactly.
have fun saying "fuck you," and this one in particular, "fuck you, Ronald Reagan," which I think Little Shop came out around the same time. I think it was '86.
Yeah, and this is 88,
Yeah,
so they're within 2 years.
so yeah, we got a lot of like, oh yeah, hey, fuck you, capitalism during the Reagan years, which interesting, just
Yeah. Lefty
I'm
Hollywood.
sure it's totally just coincidental, and uh, I'm just glad that we're at a point now where I'm glad like this was a time where. Politics wasn't really a part of movies. Like, they try to shove it in these days, but like, I'm just glad that like we could, go back to a time before, they were just like hitting you over the head with
Or I
politics in
mean, before
movies.
politics was a part of pop culture, right? I mean,
Yeah,
because George Orwell didn't comment on any of this stuff. This movie isn't like really treading on Orwell all the time.
yeah. So yeah, thankfully we have this very light, breezy, not in any way commenting on any political or
Very
societal
subtle. Very subtle.
issues.
It's
Yeah,
very subtle with no political agenda whatsoever. This film.
yeah. As you sit with Mary and reproduce behind your head.
as the only person on this call who's done both.
You have. Congrats.
We get it, Colin. You're straight. We get it. Yeah. So, yeah. So this movie is, yeah, about a man, Rowdy Roddy Piper, a former Canadian pro wrestler. Also, like, rest in peace. He's passed. I like a
Yeah,
while back.
like
I think early two
should we
thousands.
take this opportunity to talk about the fact that you got to meet him and escort him around Denver Comic Con?
No, it wasn't him. It wasn't him.
Oh, it
No,
wasn't him. Okay.
I was with Ralph Macchio.
That's right. I always forget who it was.
Like,
Okay.
Ralph Macchio's publicity agent was Roddy Piper's former agent. So yeah, I
Okay.
like was hanging out with Ralph Macchio that weekend, and yeah, his like public appearance agent is the same person who was Roddy's agent back in the
I
day.
knew you had a
Yeah.
connection to Roddy Piper, and I forgot what it was. I
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah, that was close. That was like,
That was really
for something
close.
that happened like 3 or 4 years ago. That was pretty in the before times. Remembering
In the
anything that
long,
happened in
long
the before
ago.
times. So yeah, Roddy is, he's trying to get a new job. He's just moved to a new city. Is this supposed to be L.A.? Is like the
I
city
think
supposed
it's
to be
supposed to
L.A.?
be
It's
LA.
LA.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he moved from Denver.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, which is where we all are.
Yeah, it's
uh,
really like, if you know LA well, you know kind of the kind of classic places that they were shooting. But it is interesting because it almost feels like it could be any American city in
oh,
the
for sure.
80s, right? And that's very much intentional, that it is very much LA and the palm trees and certain kind of highway scenes and things like that. But it could be Detroit, it could be kind of anywhere in the Rust Belt, quite frankly. Yep.
So yeah, he is, trying to find work, and I think that like one of the first scenes that we get is where he's in like the unemployment office, and they're like asking him about his job background, and he's not really having a lot of success there, so he just kind of like starts wandering the streets looking for work, which is something that you could do in the 80s. You could just literally just walk around and be like, hey.
You can walk onto a construction site with your hobo backpack and be like, I've got my own tools. Can I have a job?
Yeah.
You still can't do that in LA.
Yeah. Well, and that was like actually one of the first like things of the movie where we see this like message coming in, where he goes to, I think his name is Nada in this movie.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nada.
Yep.
And so he goes to this site, and he's talking to, I guess, like the foreman at the construction site, and he's asking if they have any jobs. And the guy's like, and from my perspective, it's like he sees this white guy that he can't really like, you know, exploit, and so he's like, it's a union job, so like you got to go. And then Roddy like turns over and looks at what are supposed to be like undocumented Latino workers who are like kind of working on the side, and so it's like assumed that like, right, sure,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then he
a
asks, like,
union
well, can I
job.
talk to the shop steward?
Yeah. And then he ends up, and then the next scene it just cuts to him actually like working on the site.
It cuts to him, like, shirtless, working on the site, and we're like, oh yeah, he's a pro wrestler, he's pretty cut. But then we cut over and we see Keith David.
Yes.
We see like a young Keith David, who I didn't even recognize as Keith David until he spoke. Until I heard his voice, I was like, that's not, oh my God, that's Keith David.
And yeah, he looks good.
Not
I was like,
only
okay.
young
Oh,
Keith David,
dreamy.
but ripped Keith David. I mean,
Yeah.
like, my goodness, Keith David.
Yeah, I know personally for me, my most like formative experience with Keith David growing up was him being the voice of Goliath in Gargoyles.
That's right.
And so like that voice is just like so iconic to me. And I just, oh my God, his voice is just like, it's just like you just like feel it like in like rumbles in your nether regions.
Like, and it's like through your whole trunk, right? It's like through the whole this whole part of your body. Like, I would listen to him read the phone book.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. Greg says that he's definitely chiseled like Goliath too, which he 100% is. Yeah, made of granite. And so yeah, they're working together, and we see they're kind of all like living in this like they're like all like kind of living in this like encampment in a park.
Like a
Um,
shanty town type of
yeah,
situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
which is again it was interesting. I was like, oh yeah, this is the 80s, and like it's all kind of like it never really went away, but it feels like it's like all kind of coming full circle as we kind of like are able to see more of social media and the internet, and like we're able to see more of what's actually happening in the world. And so this like thing that I feel like at the time was, if you weren't like in a big city, if you weren't like seeing it like on your commute to work, or seeing it in movies, you could easily just kind of ignore the fact that this is happening. And so, yeah, it was interesting because it felt like it was coming kind of full circle, but it's like something that actually never stops. So the circle is just
Yeah.
more of a line that's just continued to go up.
Yeah. And again, parts of LA look exactly like this still,
Yeah,
and parts of Denver do too.
Yeah.
yeah, and
If
like
if
this,
you
yeah,
if you go down around certain parts of Cap Hill, like you'll see encampments exactly like that. It's kind of eerie.
yeah, with the sweeps and everything, which is like
Mhm.
Yeah,
as we go
the
along.
sweeps where they're using entirely the wrong type of heavy machinery to wipe it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, this was just because they come in with a front end loader to like wipe out the camp, and I'm like, why not a bulldozer? That was one of the
I,
things that I wrote down.
I'm glad that that's what you took away from that scene, Colin.
Yeah.
No, I know your
that,
surveyor mind is.
that was not, and we'll get into this. That was not the only time that my work brain overrode like what this movie was trying to say. That I was like, I got distracted by something by like surveyor brain.
I love hearing about Surveyor Brain on this. Never thought about the hubcap, or not hubcap, manhole.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so like we find out that there's this this church. There's a preacher who's like standing out in front of standing out on the street. He's kind of doing like the whole the end is nigh type of sermon on the street, but he's like talking about how everyone is asleep and they want to keep everyone asleep. They're working to enslave us. And, people are kind of taking him for granted as this kind of, crazy person on the street. And, I immediately was like, oh, it's like, like the Oracle, like the crazy man or the Oracle, where
Yeah,
it's
like the
like,
harbinger of doom in any like Jason movie or something.
yeah. And so he's like, yeah, tuned in. And as we find out, like this church is working to actually like interrupt the signal that's going out, and essentially like brainwashing people into seeing the world through the lens that, these mysterious people that, at the beginning of the movie, we're not really sure like who they are, other than we kind of like see this recurring theme of, oh yeah, it tends to be like the new it's like the news, it's like the rich and the wealthy, it's like these reality TV shows that are like I mean it wasn't really reality, it's more like
Well,
daytime
it was
talk
reality
shows
TV
at the
shows
time.
before reality TV shows, because that was
Yeah,
one of the first quotes that I wrote down. Was he's walking by and he sees a lady on television talking about like, all I want to do is to be famous, and then people will like me and people will love me. And I'm like, this is 1988. This is so far before the Kardashians. This is
yeah.
before people could be famous for just being famous.
Yeah,
Like it was one of many ways that this movie was like so ahead of its time.
yeah. And so yeah, this signal is like like literally just like sucking people in. And there's this interruption of the signal that happens occasionally, and everyone knows it and just kind of knows them as like the hacker. And this interruption comes in and pretty much tells everyone like, this is what they want you to be numb, they want you to be apathetic, they want you to be glued to the television and not thinking about the injustices of the world, the inequalities of the world, uh, and just keep you asleep.
And keep you asleep, and that it's this kind of wonderful critique of capitalism, right? A wonderful critique of ideology, but that I'm just was trying to find the quote here that in 2015, John Carpenter was talking about that this was a documentary, right? And that a documentary that is still true today, which I really loved kind of thinking of it that way, right? That not as a fictional piece, but as, and here it is, quote, all the aliens are members of the upper class, the rich, and they're slowly exploiting the middle class, and everyone's becoming poorer. It has a theme and a message to it, but it's basically an action film.
Well, we're talking
early
on in the movie, they're talking about how the middle class is disappearing, and that's exactly what was happening at this time in America. Like when Reaganomics and like the whole Republican platform was happening, it was the elimination of the middle class in America, and it's so much worse now that the middle class basically no longer exists. I was blown away by like how ahead of its time this movie was, like how prescient John Carpenter was in 1988 to be making this. It's just the pacing of it drove me a little bit crazy.
Well, you mean the first half hour of wandering?
Yeah.
The first half hour, and also the full 5.5 minute wrestling match.
That one I actually love that.
and it has a meaning, so we'll get there. Because that's my favorite scene of the movie.
But yeah, like we talk about like the whole like erasure of the middle class, and I think too like when it talks about these aliens and how they're working with like certain humans with the promise of like power and wealth and fame, and it talks about how people are willing to, within their greed, are willing to essentially sell out their own like planet, their own people, in order to like hold on to like in order to acquire some like modicum of like wealth and power. And we see that once again today, and even within the last couple of days online, with all of the talk of raising the minimum wage to $15, there's been so many people who are like, well, I only make, $18 an hour doing this job. So why should this person who, ostensibly is like unskilled or like uneducated be able to make as much money than I do? And it's like, you're not seeing that the issue is you are being exploited too.
The problem is you're not mad enough about like your exploitation.
Yes, and that's what I love so much about that fight scene, right? Because if the metaphor, right, you put on the glasses and you see the truth, right? The illusion is gone, right? And you see the obey signs and the conform, marry and reproduce, right? And you kind of reality
and you look at the money, and the money says, "This is your God."
Your God, right? Yeah. So that's why I love that scene with Keith David. That like it's like 10-minute long fight scene. It's
ridiculously long
because it's a profound reluctance to put on those goddamn glasses, right?
Yeah.
It's just like those people who you just were talking about, Craig, right? That they can't see their own exploitation, and nor do they want to, right? And that's what I love is this like metaphor of put on the glasses, right? Like, and he just will not put them on, and that it's a violent thing to do, right? To have this kind of a sense of one's own exploitation be revealed, right? It's both violent and you don't want to do it. And then once you do it, your whole life changes and you die in the end, right? but you're shot down at the end. But I love that scene because it's so long and it's so brutal. Like it is gross.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part where like Keith David is just kneeing Roddy Piper in the crotch, like
repeatedly,
times.
Over and over. It's do not make me put on the glasses, right? Like I do not want this truth revealed to me.
Yeah.
And again, like people often critique John Carpenter and this kind of whole genre of filmmaking as being ultra violent or glorifying violence. Like there's nothing pretty about that action scene, right? And
there's something pretty about that, but if we are talking about the violence, I do want to say one thing that like really shook me watching this from the perspective of 2021. Like probably the most famous scene in this movie is like, I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass and I'm all out of bubblegum. I mean, in 1988, when America didn't have a mass shooting every 2 weeks,
right?
I'm sure that scene played differently, but watching it from this perspective, I found it deeply disturbing. When he walks into the bank and he just starts shooting people, I was like, this is just a playing out a mass shooting. I found it like really upsetting to watch.
Yeah, and I think that's what again, I kind of had to keep reminding myself of the time that
Yeah.
this movie was made because of that. Like, and even still, like, it's not to say that, um, whiteness and you know, masculinity, maleness has not been, held at a higher level for the entirety of, our American society. But like, yeah, to the level that it is now, like, like literally, seeing this, like, last like terrorist act at the Capitol, where it is like these people who believe that there is like something wrong, like that the system is rigged against them, in this case under these like extremely like false pretenses, as far as the Capitol goes. But like within this movie, there is like something deeply wrong with the world around Roddy, and there is something that's like there is like a coordinated effort against like humanity and like the downtrodden, to keep them in their place, to keep them from realizing and waking up to the reality of like the horrors of like this like wealth and power elite, the human elite as they're literally called in the movie,
Right.
and their control over them. And so like, yeah, I just had to keep reminding myself like of the time this movie was made, because like I feel like this is one of those movies where like like some like white dude could watch this movie and like feel like and like but very easily misplace like where that's coming from, because we live in a world of like this mixed with like the whole like 1984 of it all, of like the
Right.
misinformation, the twisting of like reality by the elite and the powerful, in order to turn that gaze away from them, to where even if they do realize that something is wrong, they're looking at the wrong people and faulting the wrong people for what the issues in their life are. And that like keeps that wealthy and that powerful in their place above everyone else, and keeps everyone below them fighting against each other.
Almost the exact same way that some shitty white dude is going to misconstrue every Quentin Tarantino movie or every Martin Scorsese movie to be like, oh, they're glamorizing organized crime, they're glamorizing being a gangster, they're glamorizing all this shit, and they're not paying attention to what happens to those characters, like how they end up or what the actual message of the story is.
Oh yeah, we've seen it over and over again. We've seen
Yeah.
it with Fight Club. We've seen it with Breaking Bad. Like
Yeah.
we've seen like so many stories where like, oh, like white male main character is like proven to be like by the end of the like show or the movie, is proven to be like wrong, or is proven to go about like doing things the wrong way, or like utilizing the wrong methods, and
Or selling out their morality, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
that somehow becomes twisted into like heroism,
Heroics.
because
Yeah.
there's like one small grain of like truth, or like what like they're doing is like they're doing it for like quote unquote like the right reason, or because there's like a legitimate threat, but then they take that and they go way over the line with it.
Yeah. And that's why, like, it was so fascinating rewatching this, because I haven't seen this movie in, I don't know, 20 years at least, right? And watching it today was okay. I could see, this is this kind of lefty critique, right? It was by a bunch of kind of leftists at a time who were saying fuck you to Reagan, but you can really see how QAnon folks and the Proud Boys could watch this and have a similar like
And take the
awakening, right?
opposite message away.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or no, that it would be a similar, there are these larger systems that control us, but maybe have a different way of responding to them.
But they think that those are the different systems than what
Yes.
Carpenter is saying that they are.
Yes. And so that's why Slovenian philosopher Zizek, Slavoj Žižek, in his film Pervert's Guide to Cinema, or is it Pervert's Guide to Ideology? No, it's Pervert's Guide to Ideology, talks about this movie as being not, I mean, yes, capitalism, but really being a critique of the ideology as a concept, right? And that's why QAnon folks can read into it, because it's more about the, kind of understanding that you cannot escape ideology, right? And regardless of what that intended message might be, or how one receives it. Anyway, it has a really great clip of him talking in front of a dumpster, from the scene where they have that extended fight scene. So you can watch the clip on YouTube, just Zizek and Pervert's Guide to Ideology. Yeah, he also has Pervert's Guide to Cinema as another one of his films. Are you looking at it now, Colin?
No, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about that extended fight scene because that was the only other time that my surveyor brain got in the way of me enjoying this film. Because it takes place in this same alleyway that we use a bunch. And so this alleyway has a big, long cross pan, and that makes sense. There's a cross pan because the water has to go somewhere. But we see at some point a little area drain, like storm system, and I'm like, why is that in line in the way of this cross pan? If you're going to send the water somewhere, send it into the cross pan and send it out. Why is there an area drain in line with the cross pan? That doesn't make any sense. But that's just what happens when you spend all of your time making maps of where water is going.
Which will be the next thing that humanity fights over.
Yeah, truly.
So we just need to stick with you, Colin, because you know where the water is.
Yeah, I think that, to kind of speak to, this movie does, even within the, like, for its time, I feel like it even speaks to some of like the naiveness that like Roddy has in this movie, because when it starts, he's like talking with Keith and he's like, I believe in America and I follow the rules, so like he thinks that should like get him
That's
what
enough.
he wants in life. And like,
he's a white dude.
I'm straight and white and I follow the rules. I'm entitled to everything.
Yeah, and Keith like doesn't even like say anything. He just like gives this look that's like, okay.
All right.
Sure, buddy. Like,
sure.
Which is like, which again, like when he's going like to do the whole eyeglasses thing, I get, I 100% get like Keith's reticence to like put them on, like as a Black person in America, like full well, like how fucked up it is, like like you don't need like this extra layer of like having like the illusion ripped away. So like I get like Keith wanting to like hold on to like some bit of that, like especially like he talks about like having a wife and kids and all that. So I get like not wanting to have that ripped away, and then like that means like now he also like within this movie like he has to act on that now.
He has to act on it, and he's gonna die for it.
Yeah, and it's not even really like his choice, like because as soon as he puts them on, like they're discovered to like have like the illusion ripped away by these aliens. So he doesn't even really have a choice anymore of whether or not he wants to like continue ignoring it, because now they're coming after him because he's actually seen like through the flaws of like the illusion.
Yeah, it's dark. It has a very like, and you're totally right, that the wanting to cling to some level of like, please don't rip everything away. And that's why I just, it's so, for all the people who critique the use of violence, I think it's more akin to RoboCop or something like that, where
it's actually very much like I didn't even think of that until you just said it, but this is so much more like a Verhoeven movie than it is like a John Carpenter movie, because it's such a satire, but it's a satire that people aren't picking up on, like every Verhoeven movie is. Like RoboCop is like a huge satire. Like people hate Starship Troopers, but they don't get that Starship Troopers is like a giant joke. Like the entire movie is a satire about fascism.
Yeah, and can I talk about this for a minute? Because this is like one of my favorite things in like all cinema history, is listening to the director's commentary of Verhoeven for Starship Troopers, because even like the New York Times didn't get it right. The New York Times was like, you don't understand this movie. They didn't even pick up that it was supposed to be a satire. So Paul Verhoeven, like on the director's commentary, is like, no, why don't you understand this? Every time you see a man dressed like a Nazi, he's bad. Why don't you get that he's supposed to be
Yeah.
bad?
Like, we're presenting him as the hero, but he's still a bad guy.
But he's bad. So it's like he's talking to like a 5-year-old, but he's really speaking to the American film critics. It's so amazing. I highly recommend that as a good listen.
Yeah, and that happens time and time again, which is, we've already provided the examples, but
Yes.
it's just ridiculous how often, you know, satire goes over people's heads without like having like to be that blunt about it.
Yeah,
Of like,
unless you're like punching them in the head saying, "This is satire."
yeah,
Like, Americans are not going to get it necessarily.
and I think that that's what like Carpenter was going for. I don't think that he was trying to be subtle in this movie. I think
No,
he
it's
was
just
No.
literally, trying
It's
to
not
beat
a
you over the
subtle
head
movie
with
at
it.
all.
Yeah, he was literally like, I'm going to beat you over the head with it. I'm going to say fuck you, Ronald Reagan, in like press
Fuck
like
you.
in like my press run for this movie. Like I'm going to just make sure that you understand clearly where I stand with what I'm saying in this movie. There will be
No
no
doubt. No
like
confusion. I love at the very end of the movie where there's the little, the beam has been destroyed or whatever the sci-fi device is.
Yeah,
whatever
whatever it is
satellite.
that's creating the illusion, and it's shattered, and now everybody can see the truth.
Everyone can see the truth. And on the folks who are in the bar, they're on the television. It's a film critic who I can't remember now.
It's Gene. It's clearly Gene Siskel.
Yes, and I can't remember what it says behind. No independent thought, right?
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, these movies by George Romero and John Carpenter. There's so much sex and violence, right?" And so he's even like has that kind of meta view of what he's doing.
Right. Well, and then he even
and
ends,
then cuts to titties,
and then the movie,
right?
like it literally
The
ends
movie
with like
ends
this.
with a woman, like a blonde woman with like big boobs, like riding a dude, and then she like looks down and sees that he's the alien. He's like, "Hey, what's wrong, babe?" And cut to credits.
Yeah.
That's
Hard cut.
the end of the movie.
Yeah, and I remember like I think like maybe an hour into the movie where things are actually like starting to like pick up in terms of like the actual like plot of the aliens. I was just like, there's no way this is ending well. Like there's just no there's absolutely no way this movie like has a happy ending. And it honestly did remind me a lot of the end of like the original ending of Little Shop of Horrors,
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
like the plants are everywhere. Like
They've
they
taken
are like
over,
taking
yep.
over the world, and it's like, yeah, people can see them now, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still like this highly advanced alien society.
Yeah,
Like,
it doesn't change the fact that humanity is already lost.
yeah,
And that, again, going back to what we said, I said the Zizek quote, that's the same person I quoted about, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism, right? That's again here, that you can never escape ideology, right? You
Right.
never can, you can be, now you're aware of it, but you can't escape it. Yeah.
So can I drop something into all of y'all's minds, like both of you on this call and everybody in chat? So I just want you to imagine with me. This movie, exactly the same as it is, except instead of Rowdy Roddy Piper, it's Kurt Russell. Is that not a much, much better movie?
No, I love that it's
I
the
just-
wrestler, right? It's gritty, it's sleazy, it's like it fits there, right?
I feel
No,
like I feel like definitely I feel like there's definitely some there's something to be desired in Roddy's like acting abilities.
No, but that's part
Yeah,
of it.
that's what I
love
don't think
that.
that Roddy Piper can carry this movie.
But I think it is like it is kind of like, I don't want to say like endearing necessarily, but it's kind of like appropriate to like
Yes.
like this kind of like clueless guy who's just like stumbles into this like completely like surreal, like unreal, like reality.
But you don't think that Kurt Russell could do that better?
he would do it and it would be cute, right? Big Trouble in Little China, right? That's no, that's not his.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's
yes,
Big
that is
Trouble in
John
Little China.
Carpenter.
Yeah.
Right. So it would be kind of funny if it were Kurt Russell, or it would be kind of charming, right? Whereas I love his terrible acting ability. It adds to like the documentary feeling, right? It adds to the like I think it's actually central to it. In the same way they scouted all those like places in LA to shoot, his inability to act as part of the texture of the film. I guess that's what I would say. I do understand why people wouldn't like that, but I think it's important.
Honestly, I think the main reason why Roddy was chosen for this role was for that fight scene. Like,
Yes.
Oh,
I think that that's
100%.
like the reason why is like because he could pull that off. Like, because that was actually like a really good fight scene for
Yeah.
like an '80s movie. Like, that was a well choreographed and well executed fight scene. Like,
Yes, and I would, for all the amount I complain about boy fighting in like Marvel movies, right? Like, oh, now superheroes are gonna punch each other, ugh, right? So that's boy fighting. This is actual like choreographed, well executed fighting. Yay!
That both of them-
Marvel, take note.
That both of them walk away from completely unbelievably. Like neither of them are walking away from that fight.
no, they just needed a shower, then they're good.
And they're good. They just need to clean up.
Oh yeah, I feel like we should talk about Holly.
Oh, really? There's a female character in this movie?
Right, exactly.
No, there's the woman with the titties at the end.
Which, I mean, like, Roddy's pretty much just like trying to fuck for like when he's not like holding her hostage, which, okay.
Every romance in Hollywood.
The first thing I thought
I was like groaning for him because I thought that they were gonna go like I thought they were gonna turn this into a romance plot.
I was so refreshed by the fact that they didn't.
Yeah.
No Romo. No Romo.
No Romo.
Because
wow, Tara.
One of the first things I thought when he was taking her hostage was June Diane Raphael talking about The Running Man, and she says, like, if I have to see one more goddamn movie where a woman falls in love with her captor, I'm gonna like fucking shit the bed. Like, I'm gonna be so pissed off. And that's where I thought this movie was going. And then when she like smashes a bottle over his head and shoves him out the glass window,
oh
like,
my god!
Yeah! Like, I was so happy when she just like was a boss and like shoves him out the window. I was like, yes.
And that shot was amazing. Like, it was this overhead shot. It was like he's getting up off the floor, and it like because like the glasses make him like tired. It's like he says it's like a drug. So like when he's like has them on, it's like this like feeling of like he feels like almost high, and then like over time it feels like he's coming down. And so by the time he gets back to Holly's place, he's pretty much just like limp on the floor, and then he's like getting up, and she's like grabbing, she has like a champagne bottle in her hand, and she just does this like spin around, like just like this spin, and like slams the bottle into the back of his head and like pushes him out of the window. And I was like, I rewound that part like 3 times. I was like, oh shit, oh shit, yes girl, get him.
Marvel movies, take note, right? Like, this is how to do action scenes. They did this for like $4. Right? So good.
Yeah, and then
I love her. I had forgotten the like piercing blue eyes that she has.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
and you're just like, okay, yeah, you're clearly an alien. That's why.
It's an actor named Meg Foster, and the one other thing I really know her from is Canon Films' Masters of the Universe, where she plays a character named Evil Lynn.
That's her. Oh my
not
god,
Evelyn, not Evelyn. Evil Lynn, played by Meg Foster.
Wow. So that's 2 people because Roddy is also like it's not. I don't think it's a canon movie, but wait, is it?
No. You're talking about Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a canon film.
Okay.
But it might as well be because of how fucked up that movie is.
I don't know what that movie is.
Oh my god, it's horrible.
It's
like,
awful.
What's it called?
Hell Comes to
Frogtown. It's this dystopian future where all men basically have become infertile, and so they find this character played by Roddy Piper, who's like the only man you can find in the whole desert oasis whose dick works. And so they
Oh,
have to send him to,
like repopulate.
yeah, to repopulate. So
Yeah,
there's
whether the
these,
women want it or not. Like
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
whether the
like
women are interested or not. There's so much really disturbing rape in
it's
this movie.
really
Um,
bad.
but
Wow.
he's like got to be escorted through the desert by these two female like commandos, and they get captured by these mutant frog creatures. It's a really weird and fucked up movie.
When
Yeah.
is this from the 80s? When is
It's the
this?
Yeah,
same year as this. It's the same year as
Oh,
They Live.
I've never
Like
seen that. Oh, I've never
yeah,
seen
Roddy
any of
Piper
it.
was in this movie and that
And
movie
that one.
in the same year, which is
But
wild
again,
because
that's
they
this
could not be more different in terms of quality, in terms of like the message of the movie,
right.
in terms of like anything. These could not be further apart.
Wow, I'm now I know what I'm doing this afternoon. So I'm gonna
Oh
watch
God, prepare
that.
I would
yourself.
say if
Like
you're going to watch Hell Comes to Frogtown, like do it in chunks and like have a drink ready because it's a
Got it.
disturbing
have a
bad
bottle
movie.
ready.
Have a bottle, have the whole bottle. Got it. Thank you for preparing me for that. No. Okay, what else can we talk about this movie? Uh, I, I really enjoyed rewatching it. I was surprised. I didn't know. I mean, I get that there's some pacing issues, but it was also I just it's a style of filmmaking that's Hollywood, that's cheap, that kind of launched independent cinema. Right? You can really see how this type of movie be, be Warren Tara of the Dance of the Nine Snakes.
Oh God.
Oh,
Oh
Oh
God.
yeah.
oh no. Sorry. Okay. Maybe I
Yeah.
won't watch this
Maybe,
today.
maybe. I mean,
Maybe
if
not.
you just if you don't want to, just don't. If there's any part of you that's like, I don't want to watch this anymore, just turn it off.
Just stop
That's a
there.
really
Yeah.
good thing. So I mean, definitely start watching Hell Comes to Frogtown. But if there's ever a point while watching that movie that you're like, I want to stop watching this, go ahead and stop watching
Yeah,
it.
there's nothing worth it. Like there's movies that like are kind of like bad or like just
Right.
like wrong where you're like maybe like there's something of value here to be gained. That is not the case with Hell
That's
Comes
not
to
the
Frog
case.
Time. The Hell Comes to Frog Town. There's no
No
nothing worth it in
redeeming,
the end.
nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
if at any point you want to stop, stop.
Okay,
But I
maybe I'll
mean,
wait till the pandemic's over and watch it after
yes, actually,
the
once we're all vaccinated and we can be in a room together,
we can
let's
watch it together.
we'll
Yeah.
get we'll get a big bottle of wine and we'll all watch Hell Comes to Frogtown together and we can laugh and shit on it all at the same time.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds a little bit more manageable.
But you talk about like this movie like being low budget. It actually was. I mean, for a movie that was made in 1988, it had a budget of $4 million. I mean, and for a John Carpenter movie, and John Carpenter also did the same thing with Halloween, like in the 70s. He made that movie for nothing,
Yep.
and it's like one of the most iconic horror movies to this day.
And again, he's kind of coming out of that, kind of 60s tradition of counterculture, kind of making these movies in the 70s and 80s, which then really launched in the late 80s, early 90s into kind of independent cinema, right? Which now has been swallowed back into mainstream. But it's that kind of ability to I mean, who would produce this movie right now? This is kind of like Little Shop of Horrors, as like, could this movie exist today? I'm really curious
Yeah,
how
I
they
think
would
it'd
change
be
the ending.
yeah, I
I
think at the
wonder.
very least it would definitely be like an independent movie if anything. Like it would
Yeah,
definitely I don't see like
A
any
studio
big
picking this
like
up.
movie theater or movie studio producing this movie with the ending that it has because it probably wouldn't test well in focus groups or there'd be like some like yeah or like
People
they're
don't
like
want to put the glasses on. People do not want to put the
yeah,
glasses on.
yeah. Or
yeah.
like John Carpenter would like leave like in the middle of production like due to creative differences with the studio.
Mhm.
Like any of these things like would probably be like what happens with this
Or
movie like
they'd
today.
replace John Carpenter with Ron Howard or some shit, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it would star The Rock, and Kurt Russell would have a cameo. It'd be like kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy or something, right?
Honestly, if it was like early rock, I could see that. I could see that
I could
working.
see it.
If
Yeah.
like if it was
Yeah.
like
Yeah, like
back when the Rock still had hair. Back in those days, like that
yeah,
level.
when we could all smell what he was cooking,
Yeah.
and when it was like he was still kind of like not skinny, but he wasn't like a mountain, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this movie needs to be remade. I think it still holds, right? And it's a documentary of the 80s, and it's like a warning that was not heeded that we
Yeah.
still are living in.
Well, and that's so much of sci-fi, and I think too, especially with all the people who are kind of seen as the uh, pioneers or like the paragons of science fiction. All of the ones that are white males, which is pretty much all of them. It's really
Yeah.
interesting to see, having spent like the last I started reading like a bunch of not Olivia Octavia
Octavia
Butler,
Butler. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
like a
That
couple
gets
years
into
ago,
my
and I was like,
recommendations.
and I was just like, holy shit, like how the fuck did George Orwell become like the person that he is, and Octavia Butler not like really even start to get recognized, like,
Until after she died. Like she died
yeah.
a few years ago, and now there's kind of this, kind of renaissance of her work. But I really wish that had
Yeah, like
happened in
I
her
was upset.
lifetime.
Like I having read like like Parable of the Sower, having read Wild Seed, like all of these books of hers, and I was just like, how was I never like assigned these
Introduced.
books, yeah, in school to read, like, like
Yeah,
I mean I
because
know how, but I mean
well, we
just
all
Yeah.
need to
come
read our
on.
Ray Bradbury, but Octavia Butler, that's too extreme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's like these are like the more like incisive, insightful like critiques of the system that actually like go deeper and further like into like looking at what the future is, and like looking at like where the road that we're on is like leading us to. And I feel like because we have so many like white dudes who never really have to they never have to go any deeper if they don't want to, and so we get these like kind of like ahead of their time for their time, but still like not really going as deep or looking at like things from more than the perspective of like other white men and how they're affected, as we see in
Yeah.
this movie in particular. And so we don't really get like as nuanced of a take, or as detailed of a take of where these roads are leading us to. And it's a shame because so much if more people read Octavia Butler,
I
then
know.
there'd be a lot more like a lot clearer of a vision of like where we're at and like where what that can lead to.
Yeah. And I would say the kind of I'm very grateful that Margaret Atwood again is kind of having this renaissance with The Handmaid's Tale being turned into a TV show, but it's
Right.
a lot of white lady feminism in there. It's like, where
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
Octavia Butler? Maybe it's maybe like Regina King could remake this movie or something like that, right? Like she would be the only acceptable person to remake They Live.
Yeah. I think that yeah, I don't really have a whole lot more notes, other than, just kind of seeing people willing to sell out an entire planet for their own
Just in order
gain.
to have some personal wealth, and
Yeah,
like just it's so about Reaganomics. It's so about 1988. And it's
And it's so about
it's
today.
shocking how nothing has changed.
Yeah,
Like
and
how much nothing has changed.
add
Um,
climate change onto this, right? Like I am
yeah,
not
yeah,
willing to give up my
yeah.
lifestyle in
I'm
exchange
not
for
willing to
ruining
give
the
up,
planet.
yeah, like simple luxuries in order to save the goddamn planet. Like,
yeah. And
it
that's a
doesn't
part
care if my grandchildren are going to die. I really need to have this luxury.
Yeah, and there's a part of that where, like in the movie too, where they talk about, uh, you know, they're turning our atmosphere into their atmosphere,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like the increase in like chlorofluorocarbons, and the deterioration of the ozone, is like to make the Earth more like hospitable to these alien creatures who are here to like drain it dry of all of its resources.
exploitation, capitalism, so much going on.
Yeah.
The only other thing I wrote down aside from my stats was if you're going to put in contact lenses, wash your goddamn hands. I found that so grody. These two guys who've just come off of like the street, they've been in the alleyway and they get these contacts and they're just like, oh, all right, let me like just pop that in. I'm like, wash your hands. You're gonna get an infection.
Oh my God.
Oh. Okay, you want to move to stats? You want to stats?
Yeah. So this movie has a 7.3 on IMDb. It has a 55 on Metacritic, an 86% Rotten Tomatoes, a 79% Audience Tomatoes, and off of a budget of $4 million, it had an opening weekend of $4.8 million and a worldwide gross of $13 million.
Yeah, it was kind of considered a flop when it came out. I think it came out
even though on its opening weekend it made its money back and then some.
Yeah, even it was. I think it came out the same week as another big, or right around the same time as another horror film, and so it got kind of, ignored because of that, right?
Yeah.
But it has stood the test of time in a way that, actually, I think I read that John Carpenter was pleased that it was a failure, that at the time that it was kind of received poorly, because that meant it was ahead of its time, and that meant
and that meant that he actually had a message, and it was
it worked.
Received by some people.
Yep.
Yeah, I would think a movie like this, if his main purpose was to make money, that would definitely run a little counter to the thesis.
Exactly.
If the point of They Live was to make money.
Yep.
Oh, I'm going to be laughing about that for like 2 days. Yeah, that's great.
I love it.
Oh, yeah. Well, this movie, if anyone here hasn't seen it yet at this point that we've spoiled the entire thing for, it's available on Peacock for free. I think you just have to like sign up for an account, but honestly, I think most ad blockers work at and
I mean, I watched a Dove shampoo commercial about 5 or 6 times.
I watched the Dove one too. Yeah, I got. Yeah.
I think my Chrome ad blocker worked because I didn't get any commercials on mine.
I watched it on my Xbox, so I didn't have that luxury, but that's
all right. So yeah, if you want to watch this movie, which I think this one's definitely worth the watch.
It's free. It's great.
Yeah. But let's see, what else do we have here? We have recommendations. What have we got for recommendations, y'all?
I would say if you like John Carpenter, you should definitely watch Halloween. If you like this kind of shoestring budget, like independent cinema, like definitely watch Halloween. If you like John Carpenter's music, watch Halloween. It's a great movie. It's one of the most iconic soundtracks in all of movies. I watch it pretty much annually. I will rewatch Halloween because it's such a punk rock, awesome horror film that like basically defined and established a genre that would last throughout the 80s. But since we were talking about Octavia Butler, my main recommendation is if you want to see great sci-fi from people of color, then listen to LeVar Burton Reads. It's a great podcast that's going to highlight all sorts of stuff that you don't get, but is really going to highlight science fiction and a lot of science fiction from people of color. So listen to LeVar Burton Reads.
Nice. Here are 2 Octavia Butler books that I just pulled from my bookshelf that I would, it's Virtual. Okay, it's Kindred and Fledgling are 2 that I would recommend. Yeah, gosh, Virtual Backgrounds.
The background is blanking those.
Okay, but here's 2 that I just like that were right over there, so I wanted to highlight them. If you like this movie, I would highly recommend watching at least the YouTube. You can see it on YouTube. The Pervert's Guide to Ideology, Zizek. It's like a 5-minute clip that he does on this film in a really smart way. I would recommend Romero, who's name checked in the end of this movie. I would recommend Night of the Living Dead. And then in terms of like overt, not subtle critiques of capitalism and wealth, his later in the kind of Living Dead series is Land of the Dead. That's from like the middle aughts with Dennis Hopper, who lives in a tower that the zombies take down, right? Like it's it's not subtle. I haven't seen that one in a long time. RoboCop, right?
Yes.
I would suggest that. I haven't seen Repo Man in a very long time, but I can't remember what happens in that movie. But so I vaguely recall there being something about capitalism in that movie. And then if you actually like seeing this era LA and kind of this style of filmmaking, To Live and Die in LA, which is more of like a murder mystery, but very moody, has a wonderful soundtrack. So if that's the kind of landscape that you like, To Live and Die in LA. Cool. That's what I got.
Right on.
Craig, what you got?
Yeah, more sci-fi, especially like particularly Octavia Butler. I mentioned Wild Seed before, Pattern Master. You said Kindred, and then some like modern, some new sci-fi. I'm sure I've mentioned these on the show before, but I'll say them again. Binti. There's the Binti trilogy by Nnedi Okorafor. The Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Let's see. I'm just going through my library here. I'm like, let me see what I've been reading lately. The fifth season by N.K. Jemisin, and that's a part of a trilogy as well. A Blade
What's
So
the title?
Black.
What's the title of that last one?
The fifth season.
Fifth season. Got it.
Yeah,
Cool.
which I heard it's like there. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was announced that it's supposed to be getting a show at some point, but I haven't heard anything since. So somebody get back on that because I would love to see that as a television show. A Blade So Black by L. McKinney, which is really good. It's like a reimagining of Alice in Wonderland type mythology. Um, yeah, those are some of the things that I would enjoy. Also, I mean, Gargoyles, if you just like are really into Keith David's
Yes.
voice.
Oh, if you have not watched Gargoyles, you need to do yourself a favor and watch Gargoyles. And the
Yeah,
voice talent alone, not just Keith David, also Jonathan Frakes, Marina Sirtis.
Oh,
It's an amazing show.
yeah. I
really?
think if it were anywhere, it'd probably be on Disney Plus. Um, so I'm not sure if it's there now. Also, hey Sloth, and thank you for also affirming that LeVar Burton Reads is
Yes.
a wonderful podcast because it 100% is.
It's amazing.
Um, let's see. Oh, so that one line is I'm not sure if this is the first time that line like that type of line comes up. The whole chew bubblegum thing. Is this like the first iteration of that?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
because
the most famous one, at least.
the first time I heard it was on the IT crowd, uh, which I think it's like
Oh, that
season
makes me
two.
so happy.
I think it's like season two, and it's like Moss is like, I came here to kick ass and drink milk, and I've just finished my milk.
I've just finished.
Yum.
I cannot tell you how happy it makes me that your reference point for that as a cultural thing is the IT crowd.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is
uh,
coming straight from They Live. I love
yeah,
it.
which again, like, it's probably like the third week in a row we've talked about Richard Iowade.
I know. I
Oh
have
my
his book.
God,
I have
it's
his
so
book near
true.
here too. Oh man, I should make us all do View from the Top as a
Oh God, no. The 30 minutes of that maybe that I watched was like rough.
terrible. I still am only on like chapter 3 because I'm savoring it. This is Richard Ayoade's book called Ayoade on Top, which is a serious academic critique of Gwyneth Paltrow's 2000 movie View from the Top, where she plays a working class stewardess. It's so
Oof,
phenomenally wonderful. Oh, it's
oof,
so
okay.
good. It's around here somewhere. Yeah, it's really good.
Right on. So
All
yeah.
right, real quick before we leave.
Oh,
Oh, more Wes.
yes.
Marry
Oh,
and reproduce. There you go,
Marry and
Cullen.
reproduce. We did it.
Don't bring that propaganda on here, Cullen.
I know.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you all for joining us on the stream. Thank you all for listening. You can find us. We are on Twitter and Instagram at IWYTWT. Our website is iwytwt.com. And now we're also on Anchor, which is like pretty much going to be like our little hub for where you can find our podcast episodes. So that's anchor.fm/IWITWT. And there's links there for pretty much any of the podcatcher things that you might want to listen to us on. So if you are listening on Castbox or Spotify or Apple or Stitcher, you can find links to pretty much all of those on our Anchor page. So yeah, thank you once again. You can find me individually. I am at Catharticus. And Colin, where are you at?
I am at Cullen Munch.
Awesome Blossom. Oh, and also don't forget, you can find us on Twitch, where some of you are listening to us now and
If
watching
you're
us
watching
now.
us live,
But if you're
we're on
listening to
Twitch.
us, you can find us on twitch.tv/IWYTWT. We'll be mostly streaming on Sundays starting at noon Mountain Standard Time. All right. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Bye.